Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So hope everyone is doing okay today. It's 6:02 on a Sunday. Hope everyone has had a decent Sunday. I couldn't sleep last night. I did videos all morning, so I ended up passing out for most of the day. So I woke back up clearly, and now it's time to do more news. And to be fair, I'm playing catch up for Friday. So Wesley Walker, your shirt is being made as we speak, and it will be shipped out to you either today or tomorrow. Wesley Walker won the t-shirt for last week. He was our patron for last month. We're just now getting to it. So I'm going to do another drawing for this month for somebody to win another t-shirt. We're going to have to find a way to automate this t-shirt thing because I feel bad having my wife do it. But nevertheless, she put herself out there for it, and she's doing it. So Wesley Walker, you are the next winner of the t-shirt thing. Thank you very much for your support of the show. And for that matter, thank you everybody who supports the show. People who send me news, send me clips, people who give me their opinions, who send me emails and all this other stuff. People who show up to the show, people who share the videos, who like the videos. People who even dislike the videos if they even watched it and gave me a fair shot. Thank you. Honestly, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I enjoy doing this, and you guys, in a large part, allow me to do this. And that includes, especially, my patrons and people who super chat. All of you are helpful. I appreciate all of you. But clearly the latter pays the bills and allows the show to keep ticking along. But I thank all of you for your help. This is in a queue, so I kind of want to talk about it. Not to mention one of the guests that I have coming on April 1st. Tom DeLonge. So, New York Times, Washington Post, Politico comes out with this big flashy bombshell. Confirmation of UFOs. The United States government was studying these things, and these videos are going to be released from the United States government. But the U.S. government itself does not take a disposition on this, does not take a position. Yet it's still, these things are coming out of almost like these leaked videos. Now, the person who was head of this particular agency that Harry Reid was essentially supporting was Luis Elizondo. Luis Elizondo has been jumping across all over, having these interviews, especially after Tom DeLonge's interview with Joe Rogan went so spectacularly bad, or at the very least people say it went spectacularly bad. I personally think it did go bad. I am open to this completely. And yet, I saw that interview and I thought to myself, oh my God, why is Tom DeLonge out here doing this? Like, it looked bad. It just looked extremely bad. Tom DeLonge looked like he had this special knowledge, this special knowingness, this, oh, I know this to be true, and you other sniveling bitches don't. And it was this type of vibe to it. Stephen Greer has a similar vibe. I know the truth in this. Nobody else knows the truth. The guest that I have that's coming on May 1st, same thing. I know the truth. Nobody else knows the truth. That looks bad. I'm sorry. That just looks bad. Now, Luis Elizondo, however, his interviews have been pretty decent and pretty stable. CNN, MSNBC, Luis Elizondo has been everywhere giving these interviews talking about the technology. In addition to that, pilots, the people who were actually in the aircraft who was looking at this thing, especially the Nimitz, they gave you the pilots themselves to talk about what these guys saw. You had, in a real large part, in December, confirmation. It wasn't disclosure. The government wasn't coming out saying this stuff. But clearly there was elements of the government that was letting this information go. Luis Elizondo left his post and started working for Tom DeLonge in addition to Hal Puthoff. They describe the technology itself, meaning the capabilities of it, and saying the capabilities beyond anything that the United States can do. And saying implicitly, this is not ours. This is some other intelligence, some other technology. Now, I like that. I think that's a good thing. It's this idea of confirmation. For all of a sudden, for the last 50, 60 years, people have been screaming about this. And it's always been weird to me that there's been this kind of line in the sand. We're on a ball floating through the cosmos. I understand we have our own little realities in our daily day-to-day basis. But the real narrative is we're a ball floating through the cosmos. In the same way that we try to go to our celestial neighbors, what does our world look like in 1,000 years if we weren't fighting one another and we were using that technology to expand, to grow? Can you imagine a humanity like that? Hey, where all of the people on the planet have access to education and they can, for the most part, go to any lengths that they want, where you're not stuck in the survival mode, where you're actually looking to the larger things. John F. Kennedy giving that speech about putting a man on the moon is one of the most euphoric speeches I've ever heard. It's unbridled humanism. Yes, it was in Cold War terms, but goddamn it was unbridled humanism. This ape that just now, learning a little bit of technology, proclaiming to the universe that we're going to put a man on the goddamn moon. That's what we're going to do. All of this was done for Cold War effect. All of this was done because they wanted to get there faster than Soviets. But it doesn't matter. It's this expansive humanism, and I loved it. Now, we come in today's day and age. Tom DeLonge has surrounded himself with essentially a bunch of spooks, a bunch of military personnel. Now, the information that came out to the public, they lied to the public in this. Grant Cameron knew that Tom DeLonge was going to release this information years before they released it. Meaning it was almost like a 2-year head start that Grant Cameron knew that this data and this information was going to be released to the press. I strongly suspected they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, and because Hillary Clinton was favorable to this, that they were going to essentially tag team with this regard. When she lost, they had to rethink. Tom DeLonge had to push it back. Everyone thought Tom DeLonge was bogus until the WikiLeaks came out. And with those WikiLeaks documents, you could see that Tom DeLonge was legit. His sources were legit, meaning the people that he surrounded himself with. And lo and behold, like he said he was going to do, all of this information came released. People stepped out. You had government sources stepping out, confirming this stuff. Great. Problem. The way he is going about this, it's terrifying. The way To the Stars Academy is going about this confirmation thing is terrifying. I don't blame Tom DeLonge for this exclusively from the standpoint of him being an individual. Tom DeLonge, like anybody else, is functioning within a system, and this system has certain incentives. One of those is maximizing your profit. And even if you don't necessarily want to maximize your profit, if you want to get anything done, you require cash to do it. Meaning, who's going to invest that cash and who's not going to want a return on that cash? And if you need to get that cash because you want to investigate certain phenomena, how do you get it? Who's the person that's going to give you the money, and what are they going to want in return for giving you that money? And for a topic like this that's so expansive, that goes beyond our world, do we really want the capitalistic instinct of maximizing individual profit at the expense of social needs and social wants? Is that what we want to take for this particular topic? There are terrifying scenarios with this. This should have been a 420 video, but everything I'm saying here is perfectly true. Imagine for the moment that you have all of these military personnel and they told Tom DeLonge something. Tom DeLonge has drunk from whatever they told Tom DeLonge because he believes that these guys are in the know, these guys are military personnel, and these guys are letting me in on a secret. Now, who knows whether what Tom DeLonge is getting is the truth? Nobody knows. Tom DeLonge seems to believe it's true, but that's all we have. Tom DeLonge seems to believe it's true. Meaning, whatever Tom DeLonge believes that the world, his paradigm of the universe is set up as, we don't necessarily fully know, but we do know that he believes in this bad alien idea. So, threat detection. You need to get money. Where do you get the money from? You're trying to build one of these craft that can do some of the similar things. You're associated yourself with weapons contractors or aerial contractors. Where do you get the money? And what is the premise to which somebody is going to give you all of this money in order to build something similar to the crafts that's flying in our skies? It seems like they're going to the military. It seems like they're talking about this from the standpoint of, we need to police our skies, we need to know what's in our skies, we need to do something about these things intruding in our skies, we need to invest money into this, we need to acknowledge this and invest money into this, etc., etc. Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. Something is in our skies. We need to do something about something in our skies. No, we don't want to talk about what's in the craft, if anything is in the craft at all. We just want to say something is in our skies, and we need to get a handle on what's in our skies, so we need to invest money in this capacity. Think about what they're asking. You have something that's been coming to our shores for the past God knows how long. It's at the very least when we release those nuclear weapons. If it wanted to snuff us out, it would have snuffed us out. Now, some people will make the argument that, well, you don't know that. That's a different intelligence, and they may think that they can give more leeway and all. Fair enough. But do you really want to take this capitalistic instinct into dealing with something that may be from our shores or off our shores, or at the very least not us? Especially if it has the capacity to travel intergalactic space, or at the very least travel in some kind of way that is massively beyond our current technological capability. Do you really want to start off saying that these things are enemies and threats right off the bat? Because that's what it sounds like Tom DeLonge is doing. What are the weapon systems that these guys may create for something like this, using this particular hysteria? Think about what they've been saying from the standpoint of governmental stuff in regards to your everyday day-to-day life with politics. Do you trust what the government is saying? Do you believe that the weapons went off in Syria, meaning there was a chemical attack in Syria? Mainstream media comes out, acts as stenographers, says everyone else who questions this is a conspiracy theorist. Mind you, they have no evidence. They have no real evidence of this. Mathis himself says we're still looking for the evidence. Well, that means you don't have it. And yet, anybody who questions this is somehow a conspiracy theorist. That's nonsense. That's utter nonsense. But that is the media essentially lying in order to propagate a narrative. What about the first chemical, or the last chemical strike? The one that supposedly had taken place in Syria that was done by the Syrian regime. Again, that was most likely the terrorists themselves who pulled this chemical strike off, decided nothing to gain from this. It was somewhat illogical for him to do it. This guy who clung to power like grim death for the last 6 years, knowing all of these international forces were allied against him, for whatever reason is such a bloodthirsty monster that he's going to do something that's counterintuitive for any level of stability at home, meaning that the Western powers will get involved. This makes no sense. And yet, this is the narrative that they push. And again, anybody who questions this is a conspiracy theorist. The conspiracy theorist is only there as a label to try to hit people, to try to push people away. It's like calling Trump supporters racist and sexist and everything else. You try to tar your opposition because you don't necessarily want to engage their points. Now, I say that to say that Turkey shuts down the internet because it's found that Erdogan's government is talking about pulling a false flag in Syria because they also want to get more ensconced into the conflict. Lying, saying that they were going to use the paradigm of Al-Qaeda in order to advance their narrative, in order to give them kind of pretext and justification to do it. He shut down the internet when this was exposed, calling it villainous that they exposed the truth, that he was willing to commit a false flag. I'm just making this point. Do you honestly trust what is coming out of government and what is coming out of media? And do you honestly trust that what is coming out is honest? Do you believe it's honest? Do you believe they're being honest to you? Or do you believe they're pushing narratives? And if you believe they're being dishonest to you, and they've been dishonest for a very long time, many of the coups that have taken place all across the world was done in the name of quote-unquote freedom, putting in puppet dictators, these brutal, vicious dictators that the United States was okay with as long as they told this kind of line. What I'm asking is something fundamental. With our internal affairs, we take the disposition, meaning lefties, that we want peace. We have this humanistic idea of the world, that humanity matters more than this other stuff, and we need to create a world that's sustainable for us, meaning our interactions, and that allows us to be free. At least that's my disposition. That would mean certain extensions from that, meaning less war, meaning we need a world because anywhere we exist as a world, and I don't believe there's such thing as freedom without having access to the things that you need. Our disposition is typically, we don't know if the narrative that the government is saying is true, but we need to position ourselves as being somewhat antagonistic to that narrative because they need to prove it, especially if what they're talking about is more war. They need to justify what they're saying. They are not a self-justifying thing. So that's our disposition. Meaning when something takes place in Syria, we understand that the consequences of that being true means that the country is going to try to use it as a pretext to go to war. So our question becomes, is it true? Demonstrate to us that that's true. You've taken a narrative and you've ran with that narrative, but explain to us, prove that that's what's actually have taken place before you jump to this thing of what we need to do. We do this because, again, we take this humanistic perspective on pursuits. Not to mention they haven't been able to justify the things that they've been doing, and Western powers have been looking for a reason and a pretext in order to get into that country, and cherry-picking evidence is something that they've done in the past. Did they have weapons of mass destruction in Iraq? and they killed 1 million people, and there have been no consequence for that murdering of 1 million people. Yes, I used the term murder. Take this from our shores for the moment and add to this dynamic something that may be external to our world. What does that look like? What does it look like when they pay up a threat that's off our shores that we need to do something about? When Tom DeLonge, whatever you want to think of Tom DeLonge, comes out from Academy to the Stars with this capitalistic incentive to maximize his profit, or at the very least build that ship and get that information to the public, but with that capitalistic instinct of leaning in a particular way that gets him that cash. What gets him that cash is this kind of military thing of threat. What does it look like if the United States comes up with, we need 200, 300 extra $billion? Mind you, we spend like $1 trillion on the military anyway, but now all of a sudden we need to invest $200-300 billion. We need to invest in weapons platforms that float around in space, because there's this threat, something that's coming to our shores, and we need to maintain our borders, and we need to secure our world against this external thing that we don't necessarily know what it is. And those weapon platforms have the ability to deliver either microwave energy or missiles to any given target on the planet. But this is done under the pretext of defending our skies. This is a terrifying idea. I mean, we right now have AI being made the choice or making the decision on whether or not it's going to murder somebody. Is this the power that you really want to hand into the hands of your government? And even if what Tom DeLonge is saying is right, meaning there's something buzzing around in our skies, and what's buzzing around in our skies is somehow a threat in some way, what are they going to use that for? And do you honestly believe that technology is purely just going to be used for something else? It is terrifying, because I suspect that whatever Tom DeLonge uncovers and whatever they put out into the media to expose, I don't necessarily have this belief that the media is going to report this stuff honestly and accurately. I think they're going to be like stenographers, like they've been in the past, for other events that have taken place around us that are more terrestrial. I have this idea that what Tom DeLonge is going to use in order to this idea of build the ship and everything else, that is going to be used for militaristic pursuits. That's what I think. And I don't think that militaristic pursuit is going to be just for out there. I think it's also going to be used here. And I think it may be used here for devastating effect. Confirmation, great. But I am more fearful about what human beings may do, not necessarily what some external thing outside of our shores may do. We presided over wars where we've killed 50 million people. We've killed millions, even just in the last 20 years, on the pretext of a lie. And again, no consequences for those actions, meaning people act with impunity because there's no consequences for those actions. And we're going to take that from our shores, meaning our planet, us as humanity, and we're going to take this out to the stars with this capitalistic fervor of threat. This capitalistic fervor of threat in order to power this action. We need to grow up as a species before dealing with this. Capitalism is our childhood phase. This is prehistory. I'm sorry, it is. I know some people like to think it's the bee's knees. It's not. We now have this point, have access or the capability to make sure everybody on this planet has access to everything that they need. We should not be living in this particular way when we have the resources to make sure everyone has the things that they need. Meaning poverty is a choice. War is a choice. All of these things at this point are needless choices. Our technology is already there. We're still living in the past. History is sticking to itself. I'm saying we need to grow up, especially if we're dealing with issues like this. And the capitalistic instinct of maximizing profit. I said before, capitalism is like water on a stone. If there's any weaknesses in a stone, its strong suit is going to find those weaknesses and drill its way in. Its weak suit, especially from the standpoint of the social impact, is that it's going to find those little crevices and dig their ways in. What does it look like off our shores? And what does it look like positioned against something else that we don't necessarily have the information on, and that the public may be somewhat terrified about? Just saying. Yes, confirmation, good. How they seem to be going about it with this threat thing and all these military spooks and all this other stuff, I'm skeptical. I have questions. I have questions and I have concerns. So, and not to mention, Tom DeLonge has this bad alien theory stuff. And so, would that power his decisions? Meaning, just because he's not necessarily talking about that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't inform his particular decisions on what they do with that company. It can't just be me. The capitalistic thing with regards to outside of our shores seems weird to me. So you're going to have China colonize part of the moon, and the United States colonize another part of the moon, and then some other country colonize part of Mars. Is that really what we want to take off our shores? That's all I'm saying. And one last point. I was fully in the camp of expose everything. Whatever it is that we don't know, give it to the public. We'll deal. We need to be adults. We'll deal with whatever's out there. If it's good, bad, or somewhere in between. The problem with this now is that the edifices of government and the structures around us are distrusted. Profoundly distrusted. Meaning, whatever narrative comes out, there can always be another narrative of somebody who takes it on an insane level, or somebody who takes it on the too stable level, if that makes sense. Like two extremes. And the people who are taking it on the extremes is going to have just as much as a megaphone as people who don't. That's not because the people on the extremes or somehow new. Those people always were there. It's the loss of legitimacy of mainstream institutions because they've been so willing to parody particular narratives or narratives that just are flat out false. It's flat out false. They're not giving people real information and real context in order to make decisions. And the public itself feels it, knows it, and has responded by distrusting the media organizations. So how do you disseminate information about something on this grand of a scale that could have cataclysmic consequences to an institution, meaning us, in this area where you can have other people who take it to extreme ways and scare the shit out of the public? We need to grow up. You can understand why the United States didn't necessarily reveal this information. Once that information is out, the information is out. You can't take it back. And you're talking about the lives of, what, 300 to 320 odd million people. Not to mention the lives of people around the world. You have religious maniacs. How do religious maniacs deal with this idea of something off our shores? How do religious maniacs in this country deal with stuff from off our shores? Oh my God, they're demons. I need to get my gun. I need to get my pitchfork. People are primed to be afraid. And when people are afraid, they do very bad things and justify those bad things by saying they were afraid. I don't blame the government for not necessarily putting this out. I think they should have, but I understand why. Many presidents just want to be managers. They don't necessarily want to get into this thing of massive changes because massive changes can have repercussions that they can't necessarily foresee. They're okay with doing this in small increments, in which case you've seen the country shift further and further and further to the right. But you've also seen revivals where corruption was tackled and we pulled the country to the left. They don't necessarily want to release this information because they don't necessarily know how the public will take it. So it's easy for them to titrate this a little bit at a time to get the public familiar and accustomed with the topic and the thought process of it before actually letting this information out in full mass. The confirmation thing, as Grant Cameron kind of made the point, was something that was predetermined. The media says it was all of a sudden it just came out. Nonsense. This had been predetermined for years in advance. So let's see who's here. Badger Damon, I think the Disclosure Project is doing a pretty good job. Yeah, it's not that I think it's doing a bad job. It's just, I don't know us. I don't know what our reaction is going to be to this, and that's what part that terrifies me. Balthazar 228. 1. Are there other forms of intelligent life mathematically certain? 2. Will they be able to communicate before either of our civilizations are out? Highly unlikely. 3. Could the government keep it a secret? No. I massively disagree with you. So, are there other forms of life? I think it has to be yes, just from a mathematical standpoint, of course. Will it be able to communicate before our civilizations expire? That is nonsense. There's no way for you to know that. Like, I understand scientists make these grand scheme proclamations and everything else, but come on, you certainly understand that it's nonsense to be able to make a proclamation when the only scale that you have to measure is you. You have no idea how other civilizations will behave. They're modeling behavior of other civilizations based on us. That is nonsense. That's utter and complete nonsense. Balthazar, I love you to death, but what you're saying here is nonsense. As for this last point, could the government keep it a secret? They haven't been keeping a secret. That's my point. It says it's you who has the bar, not the government. The government is a leaky sieve. There have been numerous people stepping out, people who are in the military, people who are in these private industries, telling you, this is what I've seen. Now, eyewitness testimony is used in every other scenario, but in this, eyewitness testimony is not allowed. That's nonsense. What you're saying is nonsense. The government has been leaking this information going back for the past 50, 60 years. They've been a leaky sieve. Some of the military documents have released, the FOIA request that's been released, even the WikiLeaks stuff that's came out. They've been a leaky sieve. The bar on the door has been you. The bar has been you. Meaning your inability to grapple with this and to grapple with the reality and ambiguity of it is the bar on the door, not the government. A lot of people like to say, well, there's no evidence. No, you just haven't looked at the evidence. You just haven't looked at it. Well, the government couldn't keep it a secret. The government hasn't been keeping it a secret. You just haven't looked into it. You just assume that they've been keeping it a secret because you yourself, in your subjective understanding of the world, has put a bar on the door on particular topics, this being one of them. You're wrong. You're flat out wrong. So, just saying. The government slipped some DMT into their drinks, Joshua Renshaw. Don't you worry that they would try to explain capitalism to aliens and they think, what the fuck is wrong with these creatures and just destroy us all? No. I think if something has been visiting our shores, you have a lot of people who are experiencers, meaning people who felt like or who had interactions with something. They don't necessarily know what it is, but people who had interactions with something. These people who had interactions with something describe nearly one constant theme running through it. You guys are destroying your planet. That's the one theme. You guys are destroying your planet. You guys need to give more love. You guys need to take care of each other. You guys are destroying your world. You're destroying your habitable space. You need to change. Uniformly, even people who report these negative experiences, same thing. You guys are destroying your planet. Now, whether they understand the weirdness that the humanity lives in, this false reality of capitalism, because that's all it is. It's not a real reality. It's a false reality. It's a game space that we're interacting in because people don't trust other people essentially to get their needs met. Meaning, I don't necessarily want to do a job and Bob is sitting on his ass. And so I need to come up with some convoluted system to make sure everybody is pushed to do work, even when it's not necessary for them to do that work. And this system, this convoluted system, ends up making other people billions while it allows other people to live on the streets. Now, if you're dealing with something and you're an experiencer and you're explaining this and you're interacting in this way, you already know this. Meaning, they probably don't necessarily care about the system that allows this to take place. But according to experiencers, they continuously say, you guys are destroying your planet. I don't think they would try to destroy us all in this kind of, okay, you guys are fucking idiots. I just, look, I have no idea where that stuff comes from. Meaning, to me, this stuff is all phenomenology. I'm ambiguous about it. I have an open mind about it. I don't necessarily, I take the alien thing to be true because there's just seems overwhelming evidence to make the point that it is. But beyond that point, I have no idea. I have no idea. And I don't pretend as if I have an idea. I've said before, I used to have this thing. I used to call it a guide. And I'll call it a guide just because that's the only paradigm that I understand it as. Where I would interact with this being, going back for God knows how long, in this kind of out-of-body space. I have no idea what that is. That could be my subconscious fucking with me. That could be something else intruding upon my subconscious. That could be some kind of interdimensional. No idea. And the honest reality of it is to take the position of I don't know. The problem with this is they're taking this position of it's, you know, we need to have some kind of technology or something that we need to do to back off this threat or push this threat away as if it's a threat. I think there's great concern that we're destroying ourselves. And I think we have these kind of arrogant scientists who will make these grand proclamations and would say that certain things are perfectly okay when they can't necessarily see around the corners. I used to write software. And when I wrote software, one of the things I realized was making an intrusion into a system and updating a system could have cataclysmic consequences at some other end of the program that was depending on that particular thing that you just changed. Take this to the space of the real world. How do you know that doing something doesn't necessarily adversely affect something else and you don't find out 20, 30, 40 years later? It's very possible that our technology is just not at a point to catch those things. But even at the point where we are at, we're destroying ourselves. We understand we're destroying ourselves, and still as a society we make no changes. It's bizarre. The one thing that experiencers continuously say is, you are killing yourselves. You need to change how you organize yourselves. So, unlikely ally. I think Trump is owes some credit, and either way we should give it to him and praise him. Let him think he'll be adored by creating peace, and he will do it. That's interesting. Like, he's an attention whore, and if you just say, hey, look, people will love you if you get peace, I think he's too far gone, man. I think he's allied himself with John Bolton, Pompeo, all these people who are hawks on Iran. I think people are policy. I don't think you're aligning yourself with those people unless you're going to be listening to those people. I think it would be weird for somebody to align themselves. Like, for example, if I hire somebody to do the video editing on the show, let's say I said, you know what, I'm just going to do a live show for 3 hours like most people do, or like many of the other shows, and I'm going to have somebody cut it up into segments. Am I going to hire a videographer that's a right-winger, or am I going to hire somebody who's more inclined with my political ideas? I mean, I have an incentive to hire somebody who's more in line with my political ideas because it's easier path to go. I would imagine the same thing with Trump and Pompeo. There's no reason that he would put these people around him if he wasn't going to listen to what they're telling him. He is too far gone. John Bolton was a shot across the bow with regards to Iran, and Pompeo's not much better. So, Jim Hyde, thank you, Jim. Jim, leave a comment when you do that. I appreciate it. I mean, I appreciate all you guys with the super chats, and I try to read those because, for obvious reasons, those things are overtly supporting the show. Beltazar, I don't mean any harm, dude. I just think you're wrong on this, and like anybody else on our show, we can disagree with each other and everything else. Joshua, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Joshua Renshaw, Jim Hyden, thank you very much. Joshua Renshaw, since the aliens did not help Hillary Clinton win, does that mean they're racist? Should the DNC sue the aliens for allowing Trump to win? The aliens didn't help Hillary Clinton, so clearly they're sexist and racist, and they're in some kind of communistic system that they're in line with the Ruskies, and they need to be, sued, just like with WikiLeaks and everything else. Yeah, that's so funny and ridiculous that. Yeah, that's comedy and ridiculousness. Yeah, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. The aliens didn't help Hillary Clinton win, so obviously they're racist and sexist. Yeah, man, I'm just terrified by it. That's all. Terror is maybe a little strong. It's just the direction that they're going with this. I think to myself, what are the things that they're going to end up with? Platforms that are automatic AIs, and those AIs are going to be looking for things in our skies in order to shoot down potentially. Can you imagine that? I mean, I can imagine that. We use AI for pretty much everything else. When you get on an elevator, there's automatic intelligence that's remote that allows you to go from point A to point B. There was a person in an elevator once before, and people say, wait a minute, if we get rid of this job, what are people going to do? People are going to find something else to do. Horse and buggies. At some point, you have maglevs. They get you from point A to point B that are for the most part automatic if you're in somewhere like Orlando, Florida or somewhere, or Las Vegas. Like, cars right now in California are allowed to drive automated. This is a trend. Fact is, the computers can do it better because they're designed specifically to do that particular thing. And human ingenuity and human skill is best used in other ways. So if you can free somebody using technology, free that person using technology. The problem with this is our system itself that punishes people when they free people with technology in this way. But technology should be used in the pursuit of freedom. With the technological acumen that we have at our disposal, what are the weapon systems going to look like? Like, imagine weapon systems that sit in space or in orbit using some kind of solar power, energy, or whatever, and anything that flies in our skies, it just shoots down. There's a detection to know whether or not it's a commuter, airline versus something else, but it potentially shoots down. Imagine for the moment when these weapon systems start floating across the planet when they want to attack other nations. Right now we use planes and drones and everything else. We give AI to those drones so those drones can make decisions on their own on who they want to kill. And imagine when they have weapons platforms that makes that same decision. Imagine for the moment Bashar al-Assad. Oh my God, we hate Bashar al-Assad. And Western powers decided to snuff him out, hit his capital right off the bat. Imagine when other countries get this technology, and other countries also have the capacity to do the same. This is a terrifying potential. And I don't necessarily want this capitalistic instinct to be one of the deciding factors in how we pursue our affairs within regards to something else that's not us. So, I'm just saying. Just saying. Alright guys, this one's going 35 minutes. I'm trying to keep these videos a little short. Look, the confirmation is a good thing. Confirmation is a good thing. I feel like we need a value system change, however, before honestly engaging this. Because if you can't honestly believe what your, elected leaders and what your media is telling you, it's a crapshoot. It's like, how do you know what to believe if all of these people are saying different things and all of these people have some this weird dog in the hunt? How do you know what's true? And do you really want to go into this kind of era of contact with something else when you have no idea what's true? Just saying. Be afraid. Be very afraid. Garden Gnome, that Secure Team channel is hilarious. So I haven't watched a lot of that stuff. Like I've seen his videos on Tom DeLonge. Those I like. And I don't necessarily hate or dislike his videos. But again, you're stuck with this thing of what's true. I have no idea. I have no idea. Are we allowed to have affairs with aliens? Fred Edwards, you can have an affair with anybody you want. Have at it. Have at it. I am lefty on this stuff. Free love. If that's love with an alien, have love with an alien. Do your thing, man. Joshua Renshaw. Aliens are going to come here, learn about the DNC lawsuit, and against Russia conclude there is no intelligent life here and fly away. I mean, intelligent life, what does it mean to be intelligent? And if you are doing something that is destroying your world, and this is the only world you have to live on, is it intelligent? Is that species intelligent? We are functioning within a game space in a system. That system has certain incentives. And if you want to get anything accomplished big, you need to function within the rules of that system. It's kind of difficult to go without it. Now, what I mean by that is, you need cash in order to operate. Where are you going to get the cash from? That's a fundamental problem, whether you're in politics or whether you're in something like this. And that's also a terrifying aspect, because what are those people who do who are going to give you the money for it? And when they find, how could we just maximize our profit off the technology that we invested in? Is that what you really want? Do you really want this to be for mankind as a whole, or do you really want a few plutocrats going and getting in it alone? Here's the thing. People complain that the communistic system, it's like, oh God, communism was having this top-down approach to everything else. You understand that even in the capitalistic system, you've ended up with the top 1% that owns the majority of wealth in this world, and they're unaccountable. They're unaccountable. Their wealth is unchecked and unchallenged for the most part. At the very least, in a communistic system, you have those people pushing and arguing within the system itself. Within that 1%, you have none of that. That 1% makes those choices purely on their own capitalistic instinct and how they can maximize their profits. And I'm saying this, being positioned in space, is a terrifying prospect. We should not let that cancer spread from the shores of this planet. If it was up to me, it would need to be snuffed out. We need to reorganize our affairs. So I'm going to end this. Nicole Heron, give Richard Dolan on here, Jamal. Richard Dolan is good. I would love to have Richard Dolan on the show. He's also one of those people who are extraordinarily sane. History major. I think he had like a master's or PhD in history. As far as looking into the stuff with like a dissertation project. And it's like, holy hell. Like I was telling Balthazar, the government is a leaky sieve. Like, it's not that the government is hiding this stuff. The government may have a kind of closed mouth policy about it. But people do talk about it. People do mention it. People do say stuff about it. You still see it in documents. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I would love to have Richard Dolan on the show, and I'll reach out to him. I'll see what he says. Alright guys, I'll end it here. Thank you guys for showing up. I hope you were able to keep an open mind. Everything I've just said here in this video is true. Which makes it that much more interesting, if I'm being honest. We have the potential for great and amazing things. we also have the potential for very terrifying realities. The question becomes, which one do we choose? It is going to take us to grow up in order to choose the latter. I'm skeptical, even though I push for the light. So, alright guys, I'll leave it here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through PayPal, Patreon, or Super Chat. And by the way, Joshua Renshaw, Jim Hayden, and Belthazar228, thank you guys. You guys are immense help to support the show. You are immensely appreciated. Thank you very much. Alright guys, I'll see you shortly. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in.